It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with millions of participants, and on Friday, it was shut down by federal agents. The FBI seized the domain names of PokerStars, Full Tilt Poker, and Absolute Poker, and prosecutors charged 11 people with fraud, money laundering, and illegal gambling. James Kilsby is the America's editor for gambling compliance, a specialist in regulatory issues in the gaming industry. He's with us from Washington this morning. James, I cannot imagine a bigger deal to come along and strike your industry. Tell me, does this end online poker as we know it?
I think it's certainly fair to say that it does in the US, at least for the time being. There's been some debate for a couple of years really about whether US laws as they stand prohibit poker. People have said that it's a skill game and not a form of gambling like sports betting. It's pretty clear from this that the Justice Department thinks it's illegal as things stand now. So certainly in the US, this is definitely a game changer. There's no doubt about it.
So as you point out, this industry has been in focus for quite some time. They passed a law in 2006 that effectively tried to ban it, but now they've gone ahead and seized the domain names. Is it fair to say that the online poker industry really didn't see that tactic coming?
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, this is the first time that, at least I'm aware of, that the federal authorities have used that tactic and seized the domain names. And that meant, for example, over the weekend, that if you're an international player with these sites in the UK or Australia, you couldn't access the site through that .com domain. And that's obviously of huge significance, not just for the industry in the US, but globally.
Now, with charges of bank fraud and money laundering, it's clear that the focus of the prosecutor's case is on payments. Is that ultimately the Achilles heel of this industry? Because it seems to be what the 2006 law focused on in the first place.
That's right. I think that the enforcement of online gambling, countries in Europe that have looked at this as well, and often looked at it in conjunction with actual licensing and protecting a licensed market, looking at the payment mechanism and blocking that. Another thing that's been considered is blocking ISPs, blocking web addresses. That's not something that the US has discussed seriously. And the other thing would be banning the advertising. But I mean, these poker companies were able to advertise in the US by advertising free play sites through .net web addresses that didn't take money, and they were doing that legitimately.
James,
so
I just want to ask you before we run, because we only have about 20-30 seconds. Who are the winners? Are there going to be any winners out of this? Does more traffic go to the casinos? Does it go to British gambling sites, for example?
As your segment said before, bwin.party on the London Stock Exchange proved to be a winner this morning. There's probably, I think the focus of that would be in Europe and a competition there, but I think the question really that remains to be seen is how this impacts debate over possible regulation in the US. If this leads to regulation as a result of the need to protect consumers, there could be winners among US casino companies moving into the space. If not, and if it poisons the issue, then the online gambling sector as a whole really is going to suffer as a result of this.
Well, much yet to be decided, and the question remains whether this is a strategy to buy time before the federal government or the states create their own legislation to regulate this industry. James, thanks very much for joining us. James Kilsby, he's the America's editor for gambling compliance. He was with us from Washington. We continue to follow this amazing story, the crackdown on online poker.